Hello everyone and welcome to the Sideline Eye podcast. We're here live in Clonmore and we're looking ahead to the Junior Championship Final coming up this weekend. The first of three really exciting Championship Finals that we're going to have in Armagh this year. We have Clonmore against Middletown on Sunday, and that's the one that we're focusing on this evening, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jerry Cunningham, Johnny Murtagh and Padraig Rafferty, and we're going to look ahead to what should be a really exciting game. And Jerry, I know, doing a wee bit of research coming up here and I'm chatting to you beforehand, it's 20 years from Clonmore won their first championship, so it's obviously a big occasion. You're hoping to get your third championship this weekend?
Yes, 20 years, 2005, but 2003 we'd been beaten in the final, and 1982 we'd been beaten in the final. And some of the players, I just want to say it, put it out there, some of the players playing on Sunday 22 years ago featured in that game against Donegal in 2003, and it's a credit to them that they've dedicated themselves to it. So finals don't come our way that often. We're not blessed like some of the clubs, etc. But when we do, we hope we'll make the best of it.
It's a massive occasion, Johnny, and we're going to keep repeating this on the podcast for the next couple of weeks. For all teams competing, no matter what level, a championship final, it's a huge occasion for both clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for rural clubs, in particular. Probably one point would probably add, which does make a difference. It's refreshing, probably, that there's none of the second teams. Is actually, in some circumstances they made a lot of noise about the second teams playing, and especially for myself, like I haven't known from playing against these teams, it's very important for development and everything else. For young players, that's fine, but it's refreshing that you've two big teams now. First teams is into a final, and it's going to be massive for both communities. And obviously, maybe a wee bit tougher for Middletown after the big weekend that they had in a big local derby at the Hurling over the weekend. So I think it's a good opportunity here for Clonmore in a rural community. And we were just talking off air about it, and Jerry was filling us in on different things, and it is a credit to them around here, so I'm glad to be here.
And Padraig, I suppose it goes without saying, for finals, the two best teams in it, but going by, quarter-final performances, semi-final performances, it is the two best teams that are going to go head-to-head on Sunday?
Yeah, definitely, and was lucky enough with yourself to cover quite a few of them, so I was able to get an early insight into the games and into the finals, and especially the semi-finals there up in Abbey Park. But the two performances in the semi-final were pretty dominant from both teams. So Middletown went on and controlled the game for 60 minutes. And you always thought, yes, Thomas Davis did play some good football at times against Clonmore, but you just always felt that they just way too much. They just thought that a wee bit of experience would get them over the line, and the players that they had, the quality, it just really shone through. And again, there were still some chances for Thomas Davis in the semi-final, but at the same time, based on the two semi-final performances, it's great to see that both teams that put the complete performance in is in the final.
Did you get that feeling in the semi-final, Jerry? It's okay for us neutrals. We were standing going, when Clonmore is going to win this, to have it wrapped up. But maybe from when you're involved in it, you're just not as confident.
Definitely not. I'm halfway up to the cathedral, but before I get it, no, it's like all matches. Semi-finals are for winning, and you have to go out and win. And we on paper, everybody was putting Clonmore, and it puts pressure on you all the time, and you're always fearing the worst. And sometimes, like when you've been a long history of following Clonmore, like we have, when you've fallen at so many hurdles and so many times, and you've had semi-finals. Like we got to the final in 1982, we didn't get to another final for almost 20 years, 2003 after it, and we thought we were going to be in a final every year. But we fell at semi-finals, we were beat by goals in the last minute, beat by points. So therefore, when you go out to get a team like Grinchico, on paper people say, you're obviously going to be the best team, or you should be the better team, etc., etc. People didn't realise that Grinchico beat us in the first game of the year by a free kick in the last kick of the game, and in many ways just upset the league for us. It just absolutely rattled the league for us. So we're going in with one, yes, fierce, competitive to win it, But you always have that at the back of mind. I suppose everybody has it, but we had it at the back of our mind that, you know, this could be a banana skin.
And Johnny, just when we're talking about the league, obviously you'd have played both sides in the league. I think Clonmore beat Middletown twice in the league, and both sides maybe didn't have their best league campaigns, but they're coming good at the right time of the year.
Yeah, look, absolutely. My theory on the league, you know, the league's just about getting ready for championship. That's just the way I look at it. It's not that important. You know, it's just my own personal opinion. I think especially for a team like Clonmore to come down from intermediate, we played with serious battles with them last year in intermediate, and both of us came down. But junior is our level, which I find that Clonmore, you know, their level is intermediate. You know, so I think they're strong, they're physical, you know, very strong, especially around midfield, well able to hand themselves, well able to contend with big teams. You know, in the physicality department, we're more a bit young and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say league. Like, what does sometimes happen, Sean, that I find with league teams that win the league is the struggle in championship, because they say, right, we're promoted now, and they tend to take their foot off the gas a wee bit, whereas, you know, Clonmore's going all out now to win the championship, you know, and that's the best way to go up for me.
And Padraig, I suppose, from a Clonmore perspective, they've been flying in the championship. They've won all 5 games, some of them very comfortably. Middletown stumbled a wee bit in the groups. They drew with Redmond O'Hanlon's. They got beat by Ballyhagan, but again, like we were saying, they're coming good at the right time, and we will talk about their semi-final performance, but they're coming in really good form.
Yeah, absolutely, and sometimes they're like having easier games in the group stages obviously can be a bit of a hindrance to you, so it can, because you're not really tested. You know, you're not getting that intensity, you're not getting that sort of physicality in the group stages that you would like. Yes, obviously you want to win every game, and everybody would think, yes, winning games is, you know, that's perfect, let's go. But, you know, you see there the likes of Middletown as well, is that they did stumble in the groups. You know, we actually played against them for the summon. That was what I was basing on, you know, championship predictions in the last one, is because we just didn't see that, you know, there was lacking a wee bit of quality, a wee bit of bite, but they could have come down thinking, you know, a league ahead, you know, a league up. They're probably thinking, let's just get this game over and done with, let's get our hurlers back, let's get the boys back, let's peak at the right time, which they seem to be doing at the same stage as well. But I actually think they're, like the likes of that Clonmore game against Thomas Davis will stand by them, you know, 100%, you know. Would they have wanted to score more? Probably from a paper and a journalist point of view, absolutely, to go in, you know, saying, oh, maybe Clonmore's just ahead of Middletown, you know, but now it seems very even now at the minute because of the performance in the semi-final, and that they didn't rack up the massive scores. But at the same time, you know, both teams, I think, will be very happy where they are going into the final.
And just on Clonmore, Jerry, on their run to the final, they... Obviously, in terms of tests on the scoreline, they played St Michael's and Thomas Davis, and they ran them closer than anybody in the group stages did. But Clonmore didn't play anybody that's going to be in Division 3A next year. All 5 of their opponents are Division 3B teams next year. Is that a worry that maybe they're going in here slightly undercooked?
Well, it was a worry, definitely, and it was more a worry going into the Newtown game, I suppose, than going into this game, because you know, we were put up there to be shot at, and players were put up there to be shot at, and we felt that some of our players took a lot of stick in some of the games, and we were targeted very strongly. But that's the way the game goes. We're not saying one way or another, but that's the way the game goes. And we were worried, because when you're playing teams from 3B, and they're great, look, they're clubs and they're doing their best, like all of us, to keep the games going and keep the Gaelic games going. But winning by 8 goals is no advantage to anybody. And winning by 10 goals. I mean, we played a team down here. They're lucky the scoreboard, we got 9 goals. Thank God we didn't get 10, because the scoreboard couldn't have put it up. and that was the reality of it. And it didn't do us any favours. But those teams are there, and look, we've all been there before. Clonmore have been there before. I mean, I played in Clonmore, or watched Clonmore in 1990 and 91, and back those days. In 3 years we didn't win one match. So we've been there, we've seen, bought the T-shirt, read the book, we've been there. So we met these other teams, and they're struggling as well, and some of them struggling a wee bit better, or doing a wee bit better than others. So yes, we were worried, but Newtown came in with a very strong and a very Newtown, and condolences to the chairperson, to the club, because they lost their chairperson the week before a match, which impacted a lot for them. It gave them a great motivating factor, and plus the fact they're a well organised team. Dennis Hollywood's no mug, and they were well organised, and we knew that we were up against it. Plus, add to that, probably one of the worst days of the year, where some of the kickouts went into the housing estate across the road, and things like that. So we were worried, and I thought that actually the Newtown game brought us on a lot better than even what the Thomas Davis game would do.
You mentioned the hurlers there a wee minute ago, Johnny, and we know their junior hurlers were in the junior hurling final on Saturday. Their senior hurlers were in the senior final on Sunday, and they won. There's the aspect of celebrating winning a championship, a historic one for the hurlers. They won 7 in a row, the first time that's ever been done. But they have to flick a switch very quickly and get focused in on the football. So, do you think is that tough for them?
Probably on the grand scheme of things, probably not that tough on them. Look, they probably come back late enough on the Sunday, whatever about the Sunday night, and maybe a few boys probably went on the Monday. But providing it stops at that, there'll probably be a good buzz around the club all week, and they're getting ready for another final. And it probably will affect a couple of players, but at the end of the day, they do have a massive squad. And I do think they're really going to be up for this game. I think it's going to be a cracking game. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a serious battle. I know we'll get into that later on. But no, I don't think it'll be that. I think it is a massive thing for Middletown. They're mad looking back up. They've seen Katie pushing on, especially at the football. And I personally know that they want to be up there too. So they want to push on. They've put massive resources in around the club. They've a lot of other teams within the club, and like all new pitches and everything else. So they are striving to push forward at all levels and all codes, which is a credit to them. So I don't think it'll be that big a deal, as long as they're not any other night.
Training. Padraig, we done the game in Abbey Park on Middletown and Portmore in the semi-final, and we were expecting a really big game, a really tight game, and it didn't turn out like that. Middletown were so impressive that day, and coming away, were you surprised about how well they played, or how much they restricted Portmore that day?
Yeah, well, definitely after seeing them in the championship, you've seen that whenever we played them, there was glimpses of talent, there was glimpses of real class in the team. So it was, but overall, was a surprise with the performance, and I think you probably back me up in this. Yes, and wasn't surprised in terms of the performance. Was just a surprise in terms of the dominance. There was, yes, Middletown were controlled the game for 60 minutes, and it really was the complete performance. They couldn't miss a shot. The passing was brilliant. The pace that they played the game was brilliant. The discipline that they had, because Portmore rely on the likes of Ryan Gorman getting on the ball, and the likes of Gorman kicking over a few frees for them. Whenever the going gets tough, that's a man that steps up. But Middletown didn't even give them the chance because the discipline was so good. So that was one area that they would have worked on as well. No doubt that they'll have the homework done for this weekend as well. So it was almost like you can almost pinpoint just that when they came out, when the ball threw up, everything clicked, everything just fell into place. Portmore didn't have an answer, and again Portmore were dominant all year in the league, and obviously missing maybe 1-2 key players as well. But the likes of the boys that came in, players like we'll talk about later, but the players like Paul Gaffney, who I don't think he didn't even get enough of a mention how good he played, because the likes of Sean Hugg and Finnon kicked so many scores, and Chris McCann inside and the boys in the middle and all that. But the likes of Gaffney coming in and putting in such a selfless performance to let other boys shine around him was a huge credit. And again, both teams will have their homework done here for the weekend.
That's a good point, Jerry, that Padraig makes about Middletown's discipline and the fact that they didn't cough up easy scores for Ryan Gorman and for Portmore, because Cahill Cunningham's such a good free taker for Clonmore, and James Grimley on the other side as well. So that's something Middletown's going to try to take into this weekend, that they don't cough up those scoreable frees and they don't give them away, because they know that Cahill Cunningham or James Grimley, whatever side it's on, the likelihood is they're going to score.
Yeah, we'd hope so. We'd hope they're going to score, but the Middletown team has changed quite a bit over this last few years, and they're quite a new players. That young McGuinness is a very strong player. Lennon in the middle of the field, and young Grimes and Fiach O'Brien. Those guys are strong players, and some of them I met because I knew them because I took the development squad for Armagh for many years, and young Rory McCann, and then boys all went through the development squad with me. And they're coming through now, and yes, they are a force to be reckoned with. And while our results in the league, Clonmore won't be taking it. Like, the bookies aren't too far wrong. Bookies have it as even money. They're never too far wrong. And it is, and we hope that our experience and strengths that we have will counteract the strengths that they have, and it's all to play for there.
Just some of those players, Johnny, that Jerry listed out for Middletown, and it is fair to say their team has changed. Like, we have the experience, as we spoke about, the likes of Paul Gaffney, but you've Sean McGuinness there, Finnan O'Brien, Rory Grimes, Rory McCann, Charlie Lennon, Charlie McArdle. Like, it's a new Middletown team than there has been for the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's probably a couple more to add to that as well. There's a good mixture of youth and older players. Like Chris McCann had a great game the last day, but he can be a utility player as well, and he can slot back in and play as a sweeper, or he can push on up the field. Grimes, he can do a man marking job, which I probably suspect might send him after Sean Quigley, but we'll talk about that later on, obviously, in the matchups. But yeah, absolutely. They've Danes there as well, who's a good player, very, very strong. Conor Gormley as well is he's prone to, sometimes he'll take a notion and go way up the field on a run, and can be hard to pin back, and not a bad man marker either, very strong, and that, because of the hurling, they can be very physical. So there's a lot of, I tell you, it's as Jerry says there, it's enticing now, this game. It's very, very enticing, and the bookies is never far away. So yeah, I'm quietly pleased where it's at.
Just we'll go to the matchups now, Potter, because Johnny has brought them up, and I suppose Sean Quigley is such a driving force for Clonmore, and we have seen that throughout this championship and probably throughout the last couple of years too. So Middletown, they have a lot of fires to put out, I suppose, on the Clonmore side, but stopping him is going to be one of the main things.
Yeah, definitely, and it was obviously Thomas Davis's number one priority. So it was to stop Sean Quigley. We said it beforehand in in the last preview that any corner forward would be happy with the 8-6 in the championship. I'm sure you would have been happy. Everybody would have been happy with the 8-6 in the championship. But for your centre half back to score 8-6, 8-7 in the championship really shows how dominant he is going forward. And really, whenever we got to watch him last week, Geordie King done a great job on him. That's not Geordie King's game at all, but he was tasked with an impossible task. It took him out of the game, unfortunately, because Quigley is such a driving force. The thing is that he tries. He really, really does try to take the game. He tries his hardest to do everything. So it is, and you can see that if there was just that wee bit of a link man for him, just to take a wee bit of pressure off him in terms of the give and go and whatnot, because he really probably in all leagues that I've seen this year, he's probably one of the best direct runners of the ball that there is in all leagues, no matter junior, intermediate or senior. He is a real class act. And the likes of other boys that are in there as well. You mentioned Cunningham as well. What I was really, really pleased to see about him, especially in the second half against Thomas Davis, is that a lot of free takers on teams, would be happy enough to let boys win the dirty ball and maybe take a hit or two or whatnot and go down and go over and say, set that down, son, I have that there, don't worry about it. And he is a really classy free taker. But in the second half against Thomas Davis, he won every single ball that was coming into him, so he's not afraid to go out and win his own ball as well, especially around that 2-point arc. and then he has the quality there as well to really take the game to Middletown, and obviously he has that distance behind him and the accuracy, so he'll be an ally to watch out again.
And one of the big matchups, and big being the appropriate word, Jerry, is going to be Kieran Donaghy and probably Paul Gaffney, who marked John McLaughlin the last day for Portmore and done a super job on him, and played midfield to mark John McLaughlin. When McLaughlin moved inside, that suited Gaffney okay as well. He could go to full back, so that's going to be an intriguing matchup, and it's going to be one that is going to be crucial in deciding where the Sean Quinn Cup goes.
Yeah, well, I said at the boys here just at the start that I felt that the midfield battle was going to be crucial for Clubmore, and we're very lucky. We're very lucky we have Kieran Donaghy playing the style. I've always argued for years that Kieran Donaghy was up there at county level. Whether other people maybe thought different, but that was my own opinion. And you know, we do know that we have players. While we talk about Middletown's young players, we do, thank God, had a couple of young players come through. Young Alton Malloy, there's a couple of Daniel Cullen. You know, Daniel's done the 20 player on the squad last year. And these young players are coming through as well, and you know, which give us that bit of hope and that bit of pace, that bit of steadying. And the team, yes, we're backboned by experience. There's no point it's any different. We have experienced players, and there we have that backbone, and we'll be looking to them. But it's the young players that bring the pace and the energy and the drive into the game that can, and they need the experience then to push on and bind it. And in the midfield battle, yes, Paul, your big have to give John McLaughlin a hard time, and he trampled all over him. I have to say, I think that Kieran Donaghy is a better footballer. That's where I'm coming from. I think he's a better footballer. And I think he attacks at pace, he reads the game, and his fielding is out his... And I'm not saying that because his father's sitting over here looking at me. I'm generally not saying that. I've said that for years. And his primary possession is crucial to Clonmore. It's crucial. And that now the way the game has changed when you win the ball in the middle of the field. That primary possession is crucial, and we have a few players that I think that can field brandy as well in around that area, whatever the selection of the team may be, in around that area. And yes, Sean Quigley is a strong player, and we do feel that, and I have to say it, and I'm not going to go behind the doors and say this here, we did feel that in the last podcast that he was unfairly mentioned in a way whereby, you know, he was going to be targeted. And we felt that in some of the games he was hit very hard, and I said that earlier. But that's out of the way. I've said that. Our midfield battle is crucial, and the game will come down to, and like any game, who wants it the most. It's a final, and who wants the game the most. And we have to match Middletown's intensity. They're a young team coming in. Whoever matches it, if we match it, we have the players. I think, obviously, I would say that. But I'm being genuine. And the big crucial area for us will be around that middle sector.
The Middletown forward line, Johnny, obviously he's come up against them in the quarter-final. And the semi-final, when we were watching on in Abbey Park, Sean McGuinness didn't seem to have a man marker tracking him. And he found himself in plenty of pockets, whether he was pulling the strings or he did move inside the odd time. Charlie McArdle as well could just come ghosting in around the defence sometimes. We know Finn and O'Brien are a regular scorer as well. So they do have a lot of players up there that I suppose it's a balancing act, because you can't send man markers after all of them. You have to go toe to toe with some of them. You have to maybe be zonal on other occasions. So it's a tough one for Clonmore to try to track all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably suspect Malloy will probably pick up Finn on, and that's probably one tied down. I think reverting back to Jerry's point, and I know you're on with the forwards, but I think that middle third is going to be very, very important, and it brings into the forward line on both ends, because breaking ball is going to be key. And one of the massive things that we realised from Middletown when we played them down in Clonagale was that breaking ball, they were very good at boxing off and getting break ball. Grimes was in winning break ball, the half forwards in winning break ball. Sean Ogue not so much. He was more on the periphery, looking to be the next phase of that play, and as you said, pulling the strings. And it's very, very difficult. I actually find it could be Clonmore's problem, is that what they do with the likes of Sean Oak. Do you man mark him, and do you roll the dice on that, and probably exposing your full back line? And you know, Clonmore like to try and protect that full back line. For me, and I know that from playing against them. I know from playing against both that they like to try and protect it as best they can, and they're very good at it, very organised. Brendan Donaghy can go in there and play as a +1, or he can go in the midfield and win ball. Very good at talking, very good at organising and orchestrating in there. But but he's not a man that you're going to send after Sean Oak, but he's a man that will probably try and play in that area to try and cut out some of the ball. So for me, the middle third is going to be key in what you do. And obviously, like we touched on, Chris McCann there had a massive game the last day. But it all depends on where they use him. They're very good at doing their homework, and they could use him as a free role player, or after the last day they might play him inside. You know, so they do have a lot of options. They're a big team as well. Don't be surprised they could throw a spanner in the works and put a big man on the edge of the square. They have a couple of different boys. They could, you know, Lappin that plays centre half back, you know, or even Charlie McArdle. They could throw him in there. There's different players that could float in there. Obviously, Big Maguire is still out, because he's very hard to handle if you put him on the edge of the square, you know. So yeah, it's I think the Sean Oak one now is a funny one. It's you're going to have to really do your homework on that, and providing you can get away with it, I would try and man mark him, but you have to be careful.
I think just on the Middletown forward line, Padraig, I know we mentioned it on the last podcast, and I mentioned it to Sean Oak McGuinness after the last day, speaking to him for Armagh TV. Just the impact Ronan Clarke has had. We all know the impact he had as a player, Ronan Clarke. He's come in this year. It's probably no coincidence that their forward line is ticking at this stage with him in coaching them and giving them a few pointers.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a luxury to have somebody that, you know, had the football brain and the sort of athleticism that Clarkey had whenever he was playing. You know, he would definitely be one of the players in Armagh that you would love to learn from. You know, generally he is naturally a quiet lad. You know, whenever again we played them, I don't think he said one thing, so he didn't. So I think he had total faith in the way that he trains his players and the way that they're kicking scores at the minute. But in the semi-final, it really seemed, you know, it was really blatant that there's been a lot of work done there, so there has, you know, the likes of Finnan and Sean Oak and stuff, you know, they're profound forwards, but that day it was just something different, and Chris McCann winning his own ball and stuff in there as well, and you know, even the way that they were going forward, it seemed to be a lot more organised. We had talked about it, the likes of how to use the width in the pitch in Abbey Park, which not naturally a massive pitch anyway, but they used it so well, you know, and that was probably a major positive for them, is that the way they played against Portmore, that they really struggled going with that width, and especially Charlie McArdle, who seemed to strive from that going forward and being able to, you know, he was obviously free because Paul Gaffney was able to pick up McLaughlin, and then he had that freedom, but he seems to just love coming from the, you know, the wide angles and then breaking through the line as well. So yeah, the way that they've set up is completely different. You know, I would imagine that the way the league that has went for them, they have put a massive emphasis on the championship and trying to juggle between the two sports. You know, they've obviously been trying to peak at the right time, and the semi-final was the right time.
And Jerry, we're talking about one Armagh legend in Ronan Clarke, but Clonmore have their own, of course, in Brendan Donaghy. And I know, just doing a bit of research the last couple of weeks, and I mentioned at the start of the podcast about, you know, 2005 being the first time Clonmore ever won the championship. He got the goal that won it. Now I don't know what age he was 20 years ago. He must have been only a teenager, but he's given a lifetime of service to Clonmore, and he's player manager at the minute with James Grimley, and the pair of them, they owe Clonmore nothing.
Yeah, right. But before going to James and Brandy, I have to let you know, and to be sick, if you did your research, you'd find that Ronan Clarke is very close to Clonmore. As a fact, you'll find that the Clarke family are Clonmore people, and Ronan Clarke is a cousin of my own. So we will be talking to him seriously before the game on that act.
Now we know where he got it.
I'm just not sure which side of the family it all right, But having said that, yes, his father actually managed here in 2012, if I'm correct. He managed Clonmore here and kept us up in the league. And we've very fond memories of Adrian, his father, as well down here. So it brings a little bit of, shall we say, a little bit of interest into it. Regarding Brendan and James, yes, look, Brendan Donaghy, has been the colossus for our club for a few years. And I know at times it was tough for us because Brendan was such a strong player in the county that, it meant that a lot of league games didn't play for us. But not everybody gets their picture on the wall, and Brendan's over there, except the dub, of course. And, but not everybody gets, but Brendan has been that driving force behind us. And James and Brendan are two fellas that have great respect, and particularly among older players and the teams that, John Grimley, the Remy McBennetts, Rory Paul Hamill, those guys there, that have owed Clonmore nothing. Them boys have played for Clonmore for year in, year out. And I was telling you earlier on, we played Shane O'Neill's in the championship in quarterfinals or semi-finals, can't remember, in the athletic grounds. We had 18 players. 18 players tugged out. And Shane O'Neill's, I think, beat us, maybe just 1 or 2 points. Point on it. They beat us. And so we know exactly where we are. And to get to finals like this here is just so great for the community and the club. And we had the girls 2 years ago, a couple of years ago, 23, won the junior championship. And when championships come down this road here, they have a lot of hostile territory to go through to get here. And that's not just the Jacks, by the way. But there's a lot of hostile territory to get through to get here. So it means a lot to us. And Brendan and James, I have a brother, sadly, passed away last year, and Cahill's father, Cahill Cunningham, and his idol was Brendan Donaghy. And he used to say to me, see, when you go to Croke Park and Brendan Donaghy's up in there, and it's Brendan Donaghy, Clonmore, you just feel right to there. And it was so true. So Brendan and James owe Clonmore nothing, and James Grimley and them boys put their life and so on. They're married with young children and stuff like that. And they dedicated to it. And the boys react to it. And it's no coincidence that, we're in the championship final the year. Whether we win it, that's a discussion. We'll talk about that on Sunday night. But what Brendan and James mean to us here as a club, and to Brendan as a leader of the club. And Brendan will give you his pedigree very quick. He'll give you your pedigree very quick. He just doesn't hold back and say to you. And boys respect that. And you need that. So not only is he a leader on the field, he's a leader off the field. And sometimes that can be very difficult to be, but he's it. And we have great respect for him and the other lads on the team, and particularly the older lads. And as I said, when we go back, we have great respect for the likes of the Roman Clark and for the effort that he's putting in to Gaelic football.
Those older lads, Johnny, as I say, I've seen the match programme from that 2005 championship final at Clonmore 1, and the full forward line was James Grimley, Raymond McBennett and Brendan Donaghy, and all three of them's going to be probably starting and playing on Sunday. So that's 20 years on. It's unbelievable for some of them.
Yeah, unbelievable, and they're still a bit younger than me, mind you, but that's a story for another day. It's an absolute credit to them boys, and I know from myself from playing at an older age that the commitment you have to put into it, it's actually crazy. It's full time, and them boys, that's what they'll be doing. They're looking after their food, their recovery is key. Nights to have them, and they're lucky enough because two of the managers, they can just give themselves a night off, but it's very important. It's the most important thing, that is not doing too much and being able to make that call and pull yourself back, and the leadership that them boys are going to bring, and they know what it feels like to win, and I've been on the other end of it. I've been on both ends of it. I've had Benny as a teammate, and I've played against him, and I've had battles with him, and a ferocious man, and he will call boys out, and it didn't matter who you were, he wasn't afraid, and he had his own mind, and that was it, and he backed himself to the hilt, and he was right. So I have an awful respect for him. You'd shake hands and whatever it is off the field, and then that's it done. So them boys are going to have to they're going to have to go to war. That's it. That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to go to war one last time, and they're going to have to lead by example. They're going to have to not shy away from it, which I know they won't, and they just have to get them boys ready for a battle.
And Padraig, we've referenced it a few times, that 05 team that won the championship for Clonmore. They won it again in 2016, so that was the last time that they've won the junior championship. Middletown haven't won it from 2008, so a bit of a lengthy wait for both sides. So does Middletown's hurling experience the fact that, you know, they've won championships so often? We were discussing at the start, did it impact them in terms of the quick turnaround, but does it help them for, you know, the confidence, for the nerves or whatever you're going to feel before a championship final? There's a lot of them boys have got that experience in abundance from the hurling.
Yeah, I would imagine so. You know, normally, you know, you would have the likes of the stronger teams that would be in the finals and have that experience, and things that'll come into it for them is that it's just a mindset thing. So it is. It's a real psychological factor, and it's a real advantage to have that there, to be in, you know, the final surroundings. Not only is it just like the Sunday, it's the whole week leading up. You know, everybody in the club's talking to you. You're with your teammates one last time in the county. You know, you're trying to get everything just perfect once. They know the effort that it's going to have to take to get over the line against a very, very strong Clonmore team. They will be very, very aware of that. Again, it's really just a mindset thing, and the boys there, they'll know the intensity that they need to bring to the game on Sunday, because they've went through a battle, you know, last week against Katy. So there was a lot of them that know that, and they know what has to be done. But again, Clonmore is the exact same. They know that exactly what has to be done. But in my mind, you know, yes, the boy, whenever they go in, they'll have that advantage in terms of that sort of athletic grounds feel, because whenever you go there to the final, there's really nothing like it. So there's not, and it can be quite daunting for a lot of people. So it can. So, you know, Clonmore use their experience in terms of the experienced players to gather that through. You know, it's the decisions that you make on the pitch at the end of the day. The likes of, we were talking about it beforehand there with the game on the line at the weekends. All it takes is for somebody to steady the game and just take the ball into their hands and say, look lads, I'll get you over the line. So both teams have that in terms of, as we said, the experience in the finals that Middletown have through the hurling. But then in terms of the play of the actual game, you know, Clonmore have that abundance as well with the 2-3 lads that are going to be there, and they know how to win championships. And that in my eyes, I think actually it's going to be the game of the weekend, the way that it's set up.
Do you see that being an impact, Jerry, in terms of, you know, the hurling, Middletown having the hurling and no one, as Padraig said, the build up all week, the minutes before throw in, the going down to the field and getting ready in the changing rooms and all? Clonmore have experienced that, maybe just not as much in recent years when Middletown have done it so much in the hurling. And do you think will that help in their changing rooms more so than Clonmore, or maybe it has no impact?
Well, it's hard to say, like, I mean, we don't have hurling here. But I have to say this to Middletown. People say that dual players are a dying breed, and Middletown are testimony to what GAA clubs can be and should be. Sometimes there are 4 teams: camogie, ladies football, hurling, and senior men's football, all men's football. And the dedication that those men give, because I can tell you here, there are a lot of girls sitting here in this room who play both camogie and football, and those girls are maybe out 6 nights a week, and then maybe at best 1 night off. And I know that myself from working with the girls teams and daughters who play camogie. And the effort and the amount of time that the Middletown players must give, you know, whether they win or lose, and God we hope we win, but they have to have respect for that. You have to have respect for that. Those boys dedicate themselves and their lives to their sport, to their club, to their game and to their community, same way as these girls here do. And I have to say that in a great deal of respect. Whether it will have any effect on the game or not, you know, Sean, I just don't know. I know that hurling is a very physical game, and we always find when you play teams that are hurling teams, and people around Derry and those that have Slot Neil and those teams, they play a very physical type of game. And Middletown the same. Middletown have, has to be said, come in under the radar, and have to make this point, because they were beaten a couple of their
Group stage
games. And the first we really saw them was when they played Cross in Davit Park. And we were watching the TV and we were going, where the hell did they? Now we knew they played us up in Middletown and they were quite good. They were very, very physical, very strong. And Tom Moore, we had actually a good game plan and won. But they were good. But we didn't realise, the group stages we thought they had regressed a bit. But they came out against Cross. And the first half in particular against Cross we did. Everything they went for and everything they hit went over the bar. And then, your game went away from you. You know yourself, telling you the way it went. But yes, as regarding hurling, I don't know the effect of that. Yes, they're used to winning hurling championships. They're used to that. How that will affect the football show, I honestly couldn't say. Maybe the fact of winning is a good thing and all that there. I just hope they've had their success last week. That's all I'm hoping. That they're drunk out and everything else. And they're stuck in Hughes' Middletown at the moment, half full. And if they are, well and good, I go and buy them another drink.
They're listening to you.
But on the serious side, that yes, I can't really say what the effect would be.
Just the physicality of the hurling side of it, Johnny, we spoke about that on the last podcast, and it was probably evident in the semi-finals that that physical edge that Middletown do have, and as Jerry says, it seems to come from that hurling and that hurling side of it, so that could have a big impact. We're probably going back to that midfield battle, but all over the field, physically, Middletown won't shy away, and I don't think Clonmore will either.
No, well, they are. They're a big, physical, imposing team, and they had the one thing with the hurling will help them is they're bringing a senior hurling strength and conditioning to it. And playing teams in Ulster over the last number of years, and they really want to kick on that, and they've won a good few in a row there. So I think the celebrations are going to be late because they want to push on in Ulster for the hurling, and obviously they've this weekend coming. So there's a bit tongue in cheek and a bit of crack, the way I mentioned it. But on a serious note, the physical, what they're very good against us that night was, and we didn't take them for granted because I knew the physicality they had, and I don't mind that. I like that sort of game, but they starved me out of ball. We had the wind in the first half, and it was a breezy night, a right breeze down there, and I was living on scraps in the forward line, because they were that good at boxing us off. They had the homework done to a T. They knew where we were kicking the ball. We normally go long, and we're strong enough in midfield. The boys can, German McConville and them can win their fair share of ball, but they didn't even go to catch, most of them. They just boxed them off and they had a man for the break every time. The homework done to the last, and that's what really shocked me about how impressive they were in that department, and mix in the physicality and all with it, and but sometimes the physical, now in the Larrick grounds normally it does be let go a wee bit. It's not too whistle happy, it'll let the game flow, and that's Clonmore's no strangers to that. They like a good physical game. They're not soft down here by any means, so it might depend a wee bit on the man in the middle sometimes, where he can, if he's too whistle happy, mightn't let the game flow as much, and that could affect Middletown, if they are over the top. So there's a lot of factors can probably ruin this game, Sean, or make it. So.
And Padraig, this is something that we're probably going to speak about over the next couple of weeks, because there's 6 teams vying for championship titles, obviously. I suppose what do you think it would mean to either of these clubs to actually get their hands on the trophy? We spoke about how long it's been since they've done it. When we come to the intermediate, we're going to have the same conversation about Sarsfields and St Paul's. Senior is obviously a completely different kettle of fish. Both teams going for it for the first time, but whoever comes out on top here on Sunday, it's going to mean the world to them. Yeah,
definitely, and it's something I've actually experienced, only having the one championship medal out of everything, one senior championship, thanks to some boys, and it's really, really hard to get sometimes. It's really, really hard to be in this position. You have to take full advantage of it. The full week of it. The club's absolutely buzzing. You know, it's great for the kids. It's great for everybody around the club. I think every team, in terms of the championships at the different level, you know, it'll mean something. Obviously, it'll mean a massive amount to them, but everybody's in different positions. The likes of Clonmore, as we talked about beforehand, you know, not a massive squad, not 30, 40 players on the bench for the senior team, you know. So for the likes of, you know, the bit of a smaller parish club there, you know, as you say, but with real quality, you know, there'll be a real togetherness if they win it. The likes of Middletown then, that they have obviously, you know, the hurling in the background, which is absolutely, you know, it's class that they've done that. And then they'll want to bring another championship to the club so they can maybe properly celebrate and maybe get to the pub, so they will. So if they do that, the likes of the intermediate as well, we know how flan Lurgan football is at the minute, you know, with the teams and the size of the squads that they have there. So in terms of the intermediate, that they'll, you know, it'll be for the Battle of Lurgan, it'll be for bragging rights, so it will be, you know, for them teams. And, you know, both teams will fancy themselves in it as well. And then obviously in the senior, it's probably a bit too soon to maybe talk about this, but you know, both teams again, obviously they're going to try, Madden being out of the championship final for so long, you know, Cullyhanna coming up, and then obviously getting into the final as well. You know, it means something to the club, but for all different reasons, so it does. And for the likes of Clonmore and Middletown, it just feels like there's, you know, it's going to be a real battle. It's going to mean the world to both clubs, I think, for two different reasons. As we said, smaller club, there'll be a big celebration if Clonmore win it. Middletown, if they win it, with the hurling background that they have in the 7 in a row and that as well, so congratulations to them. There'll probably be a parade there at some stage if they do that. So again, all teams have different reasons, but it's very, very special for every club.
And Jerry, we're coming to the important bit now. We're coming to our predictions. So I probably know what you're going to say, but sure, go ahead and say it anyway.
Right. Well, obviously, look, you know, I want a Clonmore win, and I'd be good, like many of us here, because sure, I'm looking at fellas out here, I'm looking at Dominic, and I'm looking at Kieran, Hugh and Sam, John Jarrett and Russell. We played for years. I played for, 33 years senior football. I never won, Paul there as well. We never won a medal. We never won a championship medal. It didn't stop us playing, it didn't stop our enjoyment of the game. But we didn't win it. So obviously I want Clonmore to win. And I want the best team, and I hope it is a good game. But I'm not terribly worried if it isn't and we win. I just want the win. And people talk about, you know, championships. It's the win that counts. Nobody's going to, if we beat in a brilliant final that was the best ever seen, that's not in 20 years' time, that's not going to be written on the bottom of it. And so we're winning. Where do I think? I do think that the experience, I respect Middletown massively, both as a club and both as players and a team. And we played them twice a year, and it'll be wrong with me. But I do hope and think that we have a strength in our team and a drive that we need to win it. And if we come out and match the Middletown's intensity and their ferocity on the ball and their speed and their pace, and we have pacey players too, then I think the dice could fall on our side. And please God it will. No, so go ahead.
Go on ahead, Johnny, give us your prediction there.
Well, I left the keys in my motor there if somebody wants to start. Yeah, look, I've stuck my neck out all year, and I've said all year from the get-go, I fancy Clonmore to win the junior championship. And I've reached the semi-final stage, and I changed my mind. As I said before the last podcast down in Portmore, that I fancied Middletown, and not just to win that, but to go on and win it. I just wasn't that. I was that impressed with them against us, the way they went about their business. Now the only thing, the caveat that comes with that is that one thing that could balance this game or make the difference is that I believe it could mean more to Clonmore. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, this could be the last hurrah for a few of these boys, and they have to throw the kitchen sink at and it could mean more to them than it will to Middletown, because Middletown loses a junior, so be it. You know, they're still concentrating on senior hurling, and they have a young team coming through there, and they're very young and they're up and coming, and you know, so sometimes in the heat of a battle, the want makes a difference. You know, especially in a final, and as Jerry said, it doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be won. You know, so that want, and the bit of advice I would say is that Sean Quigley and these players, yes, get used to it, get it in your head now, you're going to be targeted. That's fine, that's the way you have to play the game, you have to play it as you see it. You're going to be hit hard, you're going to be hit fair, you have to do the same and march on. And whatever comes at you in a championship, you have to be fit to take it, and you have to be fit to find a way of winning your battle. You know, and that's championship football, that's what it's all about. And you know what, the players, when you speak to players that's won championships, you know, and you allude to it, when you get through them battles, you know you've come through them. You know the next day, and you're sore, every single party is sore. You know, but it means something. Like I said earlier, Brendan Donny and these boys have to go to war. That's what they have to do to win a championship. No championship's won easy. And I do hope they do it. I think they want, hopefully they bring the want. But for me, on paper, I'm still just slightly going to go with Middletown to get over the line.
Padraig, how do you see it?
Yeah, well, I went against Middletown against Portmore, and I was actually let know about it. A woman stopped me in the street today, so she did. So a Middletown woman stopped me in the street and said that, what about Portmore now? And I was never met her in my life, so I'm actually afraid to say something here, being here now. I don't know if I'll get out of here.
But did you say it was good for a steak? It's good for a steak.
Yeah, I really think that this game here has the potential to be the best final of the all three. I really do think that there. I think that it's going to be a real game of chess. I think it is, and I think both teams will have their homework done. I think factors like, you know, that's going to come into it that we've talked about, the kickouts are going to be huge, all right? With the boys in the midfield, both teams don't tend to go too short, so it's going to be, you know, a real battle in the midfield with these new rule changes as well. You know, you have the likes in the Thomas Davis game. It seemed that, well, I didn't expect it anyway, and I don't know if anybody, you know, within the Clonmore club did. I didn't expect Thomas Davis to actually go at, especially for the first 15-20 minutes, to go man to man and go and play against Clonmore and try and win the ball back from the forward line and bring that intensity. I instantly thought that Thomas Davis were going to just drop back, and I think that's what actually hindered Clonmore a wee bit, is that the fact that these boys, the likes of the Quigleys, you know, the likes of the Donaghys, didn't get the room to stretch their legs because they were pushed up on. So I think that could be a wee bit factor, but again, you had the polar opposite in Middletown, where they, against Portmore, whenever they lost the ball, which it didn't happen too often, but when they did, they got back into that defensive structure, and they didn't let Cormac Kearns or they didn't let Mark Donnelly or anybody of them boys, Ryan Gorman, play football. So if they do that, I think it might just benefit Clonmore in the slightest. The likes, you know, Quigley, the likes of Malloy gets his legs going, because I think he got up for a score in the Thomas game, Davis game as well. If you allow them boys to build up the speed and get breaking through that line, then I think it could be a wee bit of a problem. As I said, it is going to be a chess match. I think it's going to be quite tight. But for me, I personally think that, as you said, it means a lot to Clonmore, and we can see here from being here today that it means quite a lot to Clonmore as well. And I think just with that wee bit of experience that they have, as we talked about, Middletown's just, you know, it's pretty much a brand new team, so it is, and just with that experience, with the team chemistry that they bring as well, you know, just with the boys that have been there and the leaders that they have, I just personally think Clonmore will just pip Middletown. If I could say it so I don't get abused in the street, that'd be a draw, I'd be a happy man, but I'm going to go with Clonmore, just nips it.
Okay, so that's us, folks. Thanks very much to Jerry, Johnny and Padraig for giving us their thoughts. Can we get a round of applause for them? That's all we have for tonight. Thanks to the three lads again for giving us everything that they did for whatever, maybe the guts of an hour there. Thanks to the Clonmore people that have come in to watch us. and I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for tuning in on Facebook. This podcast again will be available tomorrow on YouTube and on Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. This is the first of 2 live podcasts we're doing this week. We're in Sarsfields on Thursday night. We're going to have a preview of the intermediate final with a couple of special guests previewing that game. So everybody hopefully tune in on Thursday night as well. One last thank you to everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see everybody on Thursday.